More than 50 candidates are so far registered in the Alberta by-election, where Pierre Poilievre.
All right, so let's talk about Pierre Poilievre's by-election, because we haven't really spoke on that in a while. So if you go back and watch the Stitch News segment, it's talking about how there are already 50 candidates that are signed up to run in the by-election in the Battle River Crowfoot area. And the reason why there are so many candidates is because there is this group that is trying to protest electoral reform. Like, they want the government to change the way that voting is done in Canada. So during the actual election, they ran 91. There was a total of 91 candidates, but they ran, like, outside of the major parties, they were the excess of the 91. So they did plan to do this all. Let's talk about the by-election that Pierre Poilievre is running in, because we haven't talked about that in a while. So if you go back and watch that Stitch video, it's talking about how already there are like 50 candidates signed up to run in the Battle River Crowfoot riding, where this by-election is being held for Pierre Poilievre. The reason that there are so many candidates is not because there's actually that many people who want to run in politics. It's actually a protest stunt. Basically, this group that wants to see electoral reform happen, they pick a riding and they will run a whole bunch of candidates in it to create a giant ballot to bring, attention to their cause, which is electoral reform. Of course, it's not really making a difference yet because, well, nobody's talking about electoral reform other than the Green Party, which is Elizabeth May. But they did this during the actual election. See, they ran candidates. There was 91 candidates total that ran in Pierre Poilievre's Carleton riding. They did plan to do it in Carney's riding, but the problem is that because they didn't find out until really late which riding he was going to be running in, and due to bad weather, they weren't able to collect all of the signatures they need. See, because in order to run as a candidate, you have to have 100 signatures. I do believe potentially too that they are 100 individual signatures for each person, so they can't all be the same 100 signatures. So they said due to bad weather and finding out so late, they weren't able to run it in his riding as well. So yeah, so the Carleton riding had 91 candidates. Not that it made a difference in Pierre losing, because Bruce Fanjoy got more than 50% of the votes. So it wouldn't have mattered even if Pierre Poilievre got every single other vote that was out there. It didn't make a difference, right? And everything's alphabetical. It was still easy to find everyone's name, even though it was a long ballot. If anything, it just made it more work for the election workers that day. That's the only thing that it really and truly caused havoc on. So they are planning on doing this again in the Battle River Crowfoot. Now, they want about 200 candidates, but again, they've got to get all of these signatures, which is tough to get, right? So far, there is only 50 of them signed up. I think they have a little bit more time. So, Pierre Poilievre, of course, took to the news and decided to let everyone know his feelings about this, because he thinks it's a scam. He thinks that there should be legislation brought in, or rules or whatever, that would prevent this from happening. What's crazy is that there's been MPs in the past that have actually tried to introduce bills that would have actually reduced the amount of signatures that people needed from 100 to 75. But Pierre wants to introduce a bill where it would require people to at least have 1,000 signatures. Now, here's the thing. While I agree, partially that this does feel disruptive, especially because there are so many conspiracy theories around it. This was a Liberal ploy to prevent Poilievre from winning in his riding, and of course, when he didn't win, it looks even more suspect, right? But the thing is that, like, political aspirations should not be difficult to get. 1,000 signatures is a lot, right? I mean, especially if you're in a small riding and there's not as many people, and if you've got multiple, it can be difficult to get 1,000 signatures. Like, think about that. You have to go to 1,000 individual people, go door to door and get their signature, and you're going to get a lot of no's. And I mean, who knows 1,000 people? Who knows 1,000 people willing? You might have a chance of getting 100 people if you go to, maybe you're like active in your area or whatever, like in volunteering or whatever, like the chances of you have a better shot of 100 versus 1,000. 1,000 is way too much to ask for. But I think Polyv knows that. I think he thinks that if he puts a ridiculous requirement on it, it'll make it so much harder for the average Joe to run in politics, which tends to be more so like Green Party or like the smaller parties, right? Tend to have more of the average Joe. So I don't agree with his ridiculous requirements for that. But yeah, he's mad. He thinks it's a scam. He's not claiming that it prevented him from winning, at least. Like, I'm glad he's not going that route, that he's not creating, ridiculous statements about why he thought he'd lose. He thinks he lost because he was too honest. He said that recently. So right there, he says he's too honest. He's too honest. And what surprised me is that there is an independent running in the Battle River Crowfoot and named Bonnie, sorry, I had to double check. Bonnie Critchley. Okay. And they were quoted as saying that they were unhappy about all of these multiple candidates and the long ballot, protesting, because they feel that this is, confusing people, and they're mad because they're thinking, they're mad because they think that other people think that they are a part of this initiative. They think that they're not a serious candidate, and that they are part of this protest with all of these multiple candidates. So they feel that it is hurting their chances because people are not taking them seriously. But the thing is that what people need to realize is that, like, Bonnie is going on news stations, TV shows, going online. They are showing that they are a serious candidate. So, you have to you have to show that you are different from all of those other, like, just, throwaway candidates, I would call them, for the purposes of protest. So, while it being an independent, especially, it must be frustrating for people to think of you that way. It just means you have to put a little bit more effort in, which everybody should be anyways, to show that you are a serious candidate. So yeah, I don't support the idea of making it tougher for people to run for office. As is, there is already a financial barrier, because if you run, you have to spend a lot of money on, signs and, like other materials and election materials. You have to spend a lot of time getting out, meeting people. Like, there is a lot that you have to do, and financially, it is tough to be able to afford to run. Like, you can always tell in areas like who has the money, because they will have an immense amount of signs, right? And the smaller candidates, you just don't spend it. They don't. You will always see, like, less signs with the people who don't have money. So it is really hard for the average Joe already to run a campaign, but to put a requirement of 1,000 signatures is just asking too much. So, these longest ballot things, I don't think they interfere in any way, shape, or form, other than making it more difficult for the election workers. That's the only interference that I feel bad about. But otherwise, like, people are not incapable of looking at a list and finding a name. It's not like they're going through the list and getting confused and checking off. No. Like, they're going to go through the list, they're going to find Pierre Poilievre and check it off. It's, and to suggest otherwise is questioning the intelligence of conservative voters, or Polyv voters specifically. So I don't think that it's a scam. I don't think it's doing harm. But on the other hand, I also don't know how much attention it's bringing to their cause. So, but those were just my 2 cents, because I haven't talked about Polyv, and I did see this article today talking about his thoughts in regards to all of this.